Hi, everyone. Welcome to the February Housing Committee meeting. Howard is driving up from New Jersey. He was working on a project today, so he's going to miss the meeting. And we're still waiting on Tanisha and Lisa, but I thought we could get started. And Francesca Houston is joining us again tonight, but she doesn't want to make a statement or anything. She's just listening in. So, but she is our guest tonight. So the first thing we have to do is review and approve the January meeting minutes, which Rebecca did a great job on, I thought. Anyone have any notes?
I thought they were good and move that we approve them.
Yeah.
A second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. Then on to current business. The outreach committee subcommittee did meet a few weeks ago, and then we asked everyone to work on the focus group list, and it was great how everyone contributed to the list, and we have a really solid group of people. So thank you everyone for that. Looks like a bunch of people said they could come on March 12th, so that's looking like a good option for one of the meetings.
Is that day or evening?
It was during the day. Some people said they come at night. Nothing's been confirmed yet. So
okay.
And then we have a second bunch of invites going out. Kai Lord Farmer populated the spreadsheet for the architect, developer, construction people, that secondary group that H&R would like to have a focus group with. So we'll see when they can do it. HRNA is trying to do it all in one day, so we'll see if that works out. I think that might be hard to coordinate, so we'll see.
Have you had more response from the
a couple
email?
more people? Yeah. Deborah?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't remember. So we have basically two focus groups. One is sort of community members,
Yes.
and the other is the construction development trade.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's the idea.
Okay.
I wonder if we might have to mix them up a little bit, but we'll see.
Okay.
So, and one thing we need to figure out is the location for these. So I know, Deborah, you mentioned that the new library building might be a place they could meet, but
Right, we'd have to contact the library, Ivy Hawker, or somebody on the board, Dorothea Marcus, or I forget the new president is Miller, I think, or Howard maybe could.
Yeah, Howard maybe could help. Yeah,
he could help with that. But they definitely have meeting space, even though the building is not renovated, and yeah, it could work out.
Because that would probably be the best place during the day, I would think. The community center might be
is in use,
right.
Although there is that upper above the stage, behind the stage.
Oh, right.
And several things happen there, sometimes simultaneously with things happening in the main hall.
Okay, that's true. We could check
and
that.
Since it's a smallish, likely to be small groups, it might work out.
Okay, that's a good idea. And then just wanted to let everyone know, I already told John, because he wanted to attend, that all the housing committee members are welcome to attend and listen. So that will be interesting. Another thing we accomplished was rebranding our effort on social media. Well, I still have to fix the Instagram page, but we did change the logo on the Facebook page. So we're now the Woodstock Housing Committee instead of Woodstock Community Homes, and that seemed to be favorably received. We had a lot of likes on those posts. Also, Rebecca became an administrator this week, so that's good. So now Rebecca's posting, yay. And we're gonna figure out a strategy for content soonish. So the outreach committee should meet and talk about that. I'm hoping the playbook that we get from the consultant will also be helpful in that area. Then the newsletter, my daughter has been super busy with freelance work, so she hasn't designed it yet, but I asked her today if she could do it this week, so hopefully she'll do it. And the only thing we haven't figured out is where to put long form content. Ideally, when you do a newsletter, you like link to longer pieces so you don't have it all in the newsletter. So if anybody has thoughts on that, I also asked the consultant if the website they're building us could host that kind of content. So we were going to talk about that more tomorrow.
That would be great. Does the town hall website allow like sub pages or encourage
No.
that? No.
It's a very primitive website.
Sure. Yeah.
The town really should invest in a new design, but
Well,
should.
until it can be our web page, I think is ideal. Can it just be like a Google Doc or something that the public can see, or is that too wonky?
oh, so it'd link to the housing committee's Google Drive?
Yeah.
Well, or we could,
Or just a document. Yeah. Just a
yeah, I could
publicly
just link to a
available.
document. It doesn't have to be the whole drive.
Right, yeah, just the document on the drive.
View,
That's a
view
thought.
only. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think with Google Docs, it doesn't have to be just like an 8.5 by 11. You can just sort of have it be, you can have it be slides or any kind of size too. So that's a good idea.
That is a good idea. I'll ask my daughter. She was looking into WordPress, but she said it had gotten really complicated. And then spaces you have to pay money for, I think. So.
Right.
No, I mean, Google, when you have a Google account, has a Google Sites page. It's always like googlesites.com / whatever you want to call it. So I'm not sure if maybe with our Drive, we have access to that feature. I have a personal account and I'm able to do a pretty simple website if I wanted. So maybe we could do
Well,
it
maybe you can
through.
help Rebecca.
Yeah,
That would
maybe.
be great.
Mhm.
Okay. What else? So upcoming, I think we're kind of eager to see that agenda for the focus groups and what kind of questions they'll be asking. So I'm hoping they're going to get that to us. I mean, next week at the latest, I would think. And at some point, we'll also be reviewing the community engagement plan. So, but that will be after the listening sessions. So oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I just meant with the focus groups, I assume this is a non-traditional focus group. It's not like the focus groups where the focus people are all in a room and we're in there's a double glass and the client is looking through the glass. This is more of a bunch of people in a room and there's somebody from the consultant asking questions and we're just observing, correct?
I think that's correct, but I don't know. I mean, they're calling them listening sessions.
Okay. We should probably provide water or something for those people.
Yes, good idea.
Or something snacky. I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess we can ask them what they usually do.
Yeah, that's a good idea because we're meeting at. Can you come tomorrow at 4? You said you could.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can.
Good. Can you come tomorrow, Rebecca, at 4?
Yeah, I should be able to. Yeah.
Oh, great. Deborah might be working, I think.
Yeah, I don't know yet. I have to be in Kingston. If I'm home, I will. If I'm back, I will for sure. Yeah.
Excellent. Any other comments on outreach?
I think it's going really well.
Good.
I just from the meetings we've had, I mean, in our committee interaction, I think has been really excellent. So I just wanted to make that comment. I feel that we're moving in a good direction. I was pleased with the list we came up with and the responses we had. And I think that we can utilize that in other times and ways. So I think it's been a good process.
Yes.
Thus far.
Yeah, really good list that'll be helpful in the future too.
Yep. Yeah.
So then on to planning. The planning subcommittee also met and we reviewed the town-owned lands that we had identified last year, and then we took a look at a couple of things that I found that could possibly be purchased, but the committee felt that it would be better to start fresh with a town property versus buying something that needed a lot of work. So I think that's the direction we will go in initially.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is any of this related to the Housing Alliance work?
No, it is not. I
So it's-
asked the Housing Alliance if they would like to include one of their sites that they're looking at in the financial feasibility analysis, but I didn't get a positive response, so. But as I was thinking, there's no reason why they couldn't use the model that we're going to create. I mean, we're creating a financial model based on local developers and local market conditions. So once we have that, we can certainly share it with the Housing Alliance.
Would it make any sense for the Housing Alliance to be involved in trying to develop the project?
Sure, but as I said, I didn't have any takers when I reached out to them. So,
You mean about taker, what did you reach out about?
for example, do you want, we could include one of your properties, something that you're looking at to develop in our financial feasibility analysis.
Because they might not have any right now. Do we know if they do?
Actually, I do, because I
Yeah.
talk to Kirk Ritchie frequently. So,
But
I
would
think
they
it-
want to develop the town-owned properties? I guess I'm just wondering, are we butting heads? Are we doing the same thing
mhm.
at the same time? And will those come into some kind of conflict? I don't know.
Is this
Or
Linda?
should there be one path to affordable housing for the community?
I think we need to all work together.
Yeah.
And I think the Housing Alliance needs to figure out their mission and spend time on that. And right now, I think they're trying to develop their board.
Yeah,
They have a very small board right now, and they also need to develop their funding and their equity. So,
yeah, I think they have a grant that's helping them through, I think it's community foundations or Dyson, I forget which one, that's helping them with some organizational capacity building and including board and mission and so forth. Because,
yeah.
what I think it's good, and there may be a point at which, and just thinking this off the top of my head, where we want ask them to come to a meeting and report on what is the status of the Housing Alliance. I know they did a public presentation the other night with this transition Woodstock program, but I think just from the standpoint of what the Housing Committee is trying to do, and to Sabina's point of just trying to keep, some alignment and lines of communication open as we move forward, so that, obviously they're an independent, private, not-for-profit. They're not the town, and they may or may not want to develop town properties. They may not have the capacity to do it, but at least I think just having some line of communication with them would be helpful. So
I totally agree. I think it's really important that everyone's talking to each other about this problem, who's working on it.
yeah,
Yes, I agree.
I just think it's less confusing for the population.
that too. Absolutely, that
Yeah.
too.
Well, the Housing Committee may not exist forever either.
Mm.
We'll have to, once we write our housing action plan, we'll have to consider, do we still need to do anything, or is this something that we pass along to the town to enact?
I think it depends on what we come up with in the plan. There may be some need for some ongoing community involvement that the town designates. That's my sort of how I see it, how I've seen it happen in other towns.
Okay,
The
yeah,
town board doesn't have the capacity themselves to take on, and they don't want to be in the housing business. That's what they've said.
exactly. So, anything that we suggest in the plan, Woodstock Housing Alliance would have to do it, or another developer would have to do it. So, or maybe the Woodstock Housing Alliance is, holds the land in trust, and then a developer will do the building side of it.
Right, right.
So I think that's how it would work.
So in that respect, then it would be good to have them come and meet with this committee so we could just learn more directly and have that conversation with them and help them as they're proceeding and also as we're working out the plan. And I mean, that's what it's sounding like tonight.
Yeah, I think so too. I think we should work with the consultant now while we have them. And then once we, get all the findings from the consultant, we should share that with the Housing Alliance, and they should share with us what they're up to.
Yeah. Yeah, two-way.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so Kai, Lord Farmer, is reviewing those 5 town-owned lands that we have identified, and he's going to do some GIS mapping and tell us what kind of buildable acreage we have on those properties. And he's,
Where are they?
we
Are they
were
all
going
over
to
the place?
discuss that in this meeting, but
Oh, okay, sorry.
yeah, that's okay. But I can certainly fill you in on that. And then based on which property we decide to go forward with, HRNA will do the financial feasibility on that one property.
So Catherine, can you explain? I'm a little confused about, is that 2 different groups? HRNA is not doing the GIS, Kai is from something else?
Kai is the senior planner for Ulster County,
Okay.
and I guess you haven't met him actually because you weren't at that one meeting we had with HRNA. Yeah, he's very involved in what we're doing. He is the one who runs the Housing Smart Communities Initiative program.
And he's going to report good maps or something, and then the consultants are going to take over and do other kinds of feasibility examinations.
But you probably understand better. I mean, he's going to do the property analysis is what I understand, Deborah, but you can.
Right. So
Yeah.
I think what happened, the way it wound up working out, and actually because Kai knows how to do these things, he has the skill, and the county then is basically supporting this effort and not having to pay the additional dollars to HRNA to do something that they can do, that
Okay.
to help, with the same objective, right, that we have. So it's our direction, our objective, and they're providing us with the technical assistance. It's part of being a housing smart community, is that we get this technical assistance from them in addition to consultant.
So it's really the county that's going to report back on the feasibility of the different potential properties for development.
The answer to that question, I don't know. Do you, Catherine? Whether they will, or I assume that they will.
Well, I think Kai is helping us refine our proposed sites. And then HRNA wants to do site visits when they're here for the focus groups.
Would it be a good idea to have, I know we're talking about all these meetings, but to have Kai meet with the housing committee and explain a little bit to everybody how this is ultimately fleshing out, because it did shift a little bit from just the consultant and what the technical assistance is that the county is providing and how that's factored in.
Yes, well, I think he's trying to fill in the gaps, honestly.
Right.
And he's also
very smart
with the housing. He's really smart and he's got great experience, and
yeah,
he's going to help us with our housing action plan as well.
Right,
He did a good presentation the other night at that
Yeah, I
temple
agree.
thing.
yeah.
So he's a great resource and a great person.
Is
Yeah.
there a recording of that available? Do you know, for people who missed
There-
it?
There is a recording. Where is it?
Who
Maybe on
knows?
the Land Conservancy, the Woodstock Transition, the Woodstock Jewish Congregation. One of those
Mhm.
or all of those should have it.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, because I know a number of people that couldn't make it, and then some that did, some that I saw there that actually were there in person, which was really nice. So I'm are very interested in the housing options for the town.
Good. Yeah, so upcoming planning meeting, I think we need to talk more about these sites and figure out what we're thinking about them. I did visit some of them this week, so I have more thoughts on that, but we won't get into that now. And then I also think we should start thinking about the housing typologies, as the consultant calls them. I'm not sure why they're typologies versus types, but maybe someone can explain that to me at some point. But I was actually thinking that perhaps that would be a good activity for us to do as a group. And each one of us suggest a housing type, i.e. a multifamily home or a duplex, and what that will look like and how it might fit into the character of the town and how it could fit into the scale of the town and how it could be sustainable. And it would be helpful for us to envision that together. If people agree,
I-
that's a good idea.
I don't know where he got, but Kirk had some really great illustrations
Hmm.
when he was doing his Housing Alliance
Yeah.
presentation at that temple event that really, and they were, what he had looked exactly like what I thought.
Huh,
Mm.
I mean,
interesting.
I just thought I thought he really nailed it. So
Yeah.
maybe they're in the recording of the presentation. I don't
They
know.
are,
Yeah.
and I know who did those as well, but I mean, I think that's one solution. There could be other solutions.
I
And
also think it's a little bit hard to think about that question without thinking about where it's going to go. I mean, those two things go together. There's sort of some site specificity that will
Mhm.
dictate what the optimal choices might be. So it's a little bit hard just to do it abstractly.
I mean,
Right.
what you could do is look at a rural sort of vacant parcel, and then you could look at something that's closer into town where there's more density already, and look at it just as two different options of where, how you would site housing that
Mhm.
could accommodate some form of either duplex or multifamily.
Mhm.
Or clusters, or and Kirk did talk about a few of those different things at this presentation the other night.
Hmm.
Also, I thought it was actually quite good. But yeah, I agree with what John's saying. It's a little abstract,
Mhm.
and
It's also important, I think, as part of that conversation to think about who is the targeted population for living there, because what a senior needs is quite different than what a young family needs, is quite
Mhm.
different than what a young single person needs. And so it's kind of hard just to think about type without thinking about, who that residence might be serving.
Mhm. Well, maybe that's part of what we're suggesting to each other is, okay, this might work for a senior, or this could work for a young family. And this one is very sustainably designed, and maybe this one isn't. I don't know. I mean, I tell you, I have spent years looking for these things online, and they're very difficult to find.
I
And
think
most of,
I can dig it up, but I think I have something I can circulate that I found where some consultant like HRNA, but someone else put together a list of different models for a town that was like Woodstock. So I'll
oh,
try to
great.
dig that up.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, it's very hard to find multifamily home designs that do not look urban. Like if you just Google multifamily home, everything looks really urban and it just wouldn't fit in Woodstock. So that's really the challenge. And it's hard to show the community what we're thinking of when we don't have any visuals. So I think it would be really helpful to work on all of that. But if people don't think we're ready, then we can hold off.
I think, from my perspective, maybe a good first step is just say, what are the different populations we want to envision helping here? Because I do think building for, when I talked informally about the focus groups to some people, a lot of people immediately brought up seniors are getting priced out of their homes or they don't have places they can rent. And trying to work on that problem is a little bit different than trying to work. So it's trying to come up with some sort of ideas about where the most important, needs are. With respect to who would live there, I think is helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. What I would like to see ideally is mixed communities. I don't want to segregate seniors into, just senior apartments, and I don't want to put young families in the young family section, I think
I think the Housing Alliance stuff that they mentioned in Burlington and also the Martha's Vineyard one, that those will have good inspiration for us about how they've worked with these problems. And the other thing, one kind of house hunting we did when we were trying to figure out where to spend the rest of our lives was looking at co-housing communities, which are all about bringing mixed populations together.
Yeah.
So it's just another
I agree.
area to search.
Yeah. Right, so we can see what we find, and talk about it.
Yeah, I think this would be a good conversation to have on all the things we've mentioned.
Yeah. And the other thing I forgot to mention is, could it be pre-manufactured or pre-built? I think you have experience with that, John.
Yes, I think there's tons of companies. I recently saw an article that reviewed like 10 companies that are doing, building the units off site in a very sustainable way. So
but a bunch of us from the housing committee went to this conference at Mohawk last fall on very similar to the event that Kai sent us yesterday that Rebecca just posted on Facebook about how environmental efforts and housing efforts can mesh together. And they were taught, one of the speakers, I can't remember who it was, Deborah, but one of them was talking about these panel houses. So I guess what they do is they build the sides as panels, with the windows and doors in them, and then they assemble them on site.
Yeah, that's how our house was built.
Oh, cool. That's very cool.
But, the panels are very super well insulated and air sealed before they get put together. And so it really creates an opportunity to build something that's sort of environmentally and economically sustainable.
Exactly. I mean, that's a challenge. Sometimes with sustainable design, it's very expensive. So great. So how should we do this? Is anybody good at PowerPoint? I'm sort
Rebecca?
of Rebecca.
Yeah, I have those skills. Yes.
Because I was thinking if we did like a very basic PowerPoint, we just threw up our ideas on there and then we could share the screen next time and talk about them, the pros and the cons of each one. That could be an
You mean design ideas?
Yeah, like here's a picture of a co-housing situation. What do we like about it? What don't we like about it? Would this fit in Woodstock? Wouldn't it fit in Woodstock? Things like that.
I'm also happy to do that if you guys would like to create that document if Rebecca's feeling a little bit saddled with the other stuff. I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, either way, I'm happy to kind of create, a template or whatever, and just so everyone can start adding to it. Or John, if you had ideas on what that should be.
Well, I think you're going to have to create the document just to be.
Yeah, I'll create it, and then John, if you want to tweak it.
I want John to do it because you're going to have to deal with MailChimp. MailChimp is going to be a beast this weekend, probably.
All right. Yeah. I mean, and John, you want to use like Google Slides because that's easy to share around, and basically it's PowerPoint just for Google. I mean, either way, I can
No,
set
I'm
it up.
laughing because I make a lot of what are called PowerPoints, but I use something called LaTeX, which is not something that we can do
Oh,
here.
I've heard of that actually. Yeah, that's a very
It's like,
technical one, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm happy to do whatever. I think the key is just to make it easy for people. If we can just create a simple Google document where people can add stuff they want into it, to put into it, and then maybe before the meeting, I could try to organize it and make it look okay, and make it into sort of more systematic. So
That's a good idea.
Good idea.
Okay, so I can start the Google Doc and send it around, and then we can start adding stuff.
Sure.
okay.
Okay, great. That's awesome. What else do we have here?
I just heard from Tanisha. She had a kid emergency. She said she emailed you.
Okay, that's too bad.
Yeah.
And Lisa had to bring her son somewhere. So she was here for a little bit, but now she's gone.
And
Anyway,
there was a comment in the chat from somebody who's here, but I didn't really understand it.
I didn't either.
Linda,
it's
yeah.
Linda, I think.
Because our names are all here, so I didn't know
Well, I
why.
think Rebecca was, not Rebecca, Lisa was listening in for a few minutes, and
yes.
Oh, maybe that's why.
yeah,
There was a picture that said somewhere,
yes,
it is another name, and
Yeah.
I'm just a person that thinks everybody should just at least put their name on,
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
well,
think we all
she's-
do.
the right thing. to do.
We typically do that,
yeah.
always, Linda. Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure, no problem, and thank you for all your hard work, by the way.
Oh, yeah, of course. Thanks for coming.
Sure.
Yeah, Lisa had to go to take her son somewhere, so she was the one that said somewhere. She's a committee member. So I knew she was texting me. She said, I'm that one. And I was like, okay, fine. So it's fine. All right, what else? Oh, Deborah's gonna tell us about the Community Preservation Act, which would be a really exciting thing if we could make it happen.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things to talk about, even though we've been trying for years to get some traction on this. So this is something that actually comes from the state legislature that gives towns the authorities to the authority through a community-wide referendum to levy a real estate transfer tax on now I'm sorry if it sounds too technical, but basically what it is, it's the amount of a purchase price of a house above the county median price. So in other words, if the county median is 500,000 and somebody in Woodstock buys a house for 600,000, that 100,000 difference is what would be potentially could be assessed this transfer fee. And but it's more specific than that, because the purposes, the way this legislation, which has passed, there's Hudson Valley CPA, but it's up until recently, it's only been for open space and environmental properties. And there's been a number of different efforts to try and expand that to include housing as an eligible cost. The amount of the levy is anywhere from 0.5% up to 2%. Again, it's up to the individual communities to decide. The state doesn't do anything except give the town the authority to have a vote about it and figure out if they want it. The other thing that has been discussed in this town now for a few years, including meetings with Michelle Hinchy and previously with Assemblyman Kevin Cahill, was to see if Woodstock could have a Woodstock specific Community Preservation Act passed that would, and towns do this also, that would give the town of Woodstock the ability to have the funds used for eligible housing activities as well as for open space. So it broadens the menu. A number of towns that have this just for open space now are actually starting to look to see how they can bring housing into it. Town of Red Hook in Dutchess County, New Paltz in Ulster County, because everybody's looking at housing as an issue and trying to figure out how to pay for it, how towns can contribute to it without having it be a tax burden for everybody, because you're basically talking about, you know, the upper echelon of a housing cost above the median county price is the only piece that's would be taxed, and it would only be this percentage that the community has to have passed in a referendum that they want to do. So it's a very in my view, it's a very democratic way of trying to solve problems, multiple problems that communities have. And so there is a bill in the state legislature that does include housing, but it's a different bill, and I think it wouldn't give us what we're looking for, but Sarah Hanna is one of the sponsors. So I reached out to her and actually to her staff, and supposed to have a follow-up conversation with them. They're very interested also in the Community Preservation Act option. So that was the feedback I got. They want to learn more. As I said, Michelle Hinchy had worked on this a little bit several years ago, and Kevin Cahill, the former housing committee, a few housing committees ago, we had meetings with Kevin, and then one with Michelle Hinchy. So there's nothing other to report on it other than it's good that the legislature is interested in responding to community ideas about how to help with local housing needs as well as open space. And I would just say that when we have something more specific with the assembly member and the senator, that would be something that would bring to the committee and see how we can move forward.
Deborah, just so I can make sure I understood, was there two different options on the table right now for the Community Preservation Act and something else, or did I hear that wrong?
So there is a Community Preservation Act that was passed actually when I was in the legislature, that Ulster County towns can do for open space. They still have to go through the same process of having a community referendum, deciding on what the percentage is, coming up with a plan for how to use the funds. So there's still a number of steps. So that actually authorizing legislation exists. This is an additional piece of legislation that would be town specific, that would include housing as an eligible activity.
So sorry, I'm just trying to make sure I get my notes right today. So so that the option to have this tax for housing doesn't really exist yet, and people are trying to make it exist.
Correct.
Okay.
And there's lots of different ways that people are going to the legislature to try and figure out how to do that. In fact, that event that we went to in Mohonk, the open space and housing, that was actually brought up tangentially, but the same group of people that put that on, that are doing this thing on March, is it March 15th?
Yeah.
So they're interested in also pursuing this idea. So, you know, it wouldn't be just us as an outlier potentially, but it could be. And it's perfectly fine for towns to have legislation, to go to their legislatures and they put in what's called pass a resolution, and it's a message of necessity for our town, and they go to the legislatures and make a request for something that's more town specific. But that hasn't happened in Woodstock. So we actually did do it for inland waterways, which was something I was involved with, and that worked out really well. And that gives the town access to other funding associated with waterways. But so this isn't something that was just invented, and it's just a technique of how to help towns. Yeah,
Great.
without having it be a statewide thing, which can get very controversial.
I see.
It sounds like the New York City transfer tax.
Mm.
I don't know about that one.
Yeah.
That's
it's
a
the same
tax
thing.
when you buy a co-op or a condo over a certain amount, there's an extra tax that goes to the city
Uh-huh.
for, I don't know what they use it for, maybe for housing, who knows?
Yeah, so I don't know
Yeah.
about that one. Anyway, that's the story.
Great, thank you, Deborah. So you'll let us know what you hear.
Yeah. I thought
Yeah.
I was gonna have a meeting, but they weren't at the meet. Yeah, she wasn't, the assembly member wasn't at the meeting, so
Mhm.
that's why we're going through staff now.
Right.
Okay.
Thanks for doing that.
Mhm.
Oh, so now we have this climate smart report. I mostly sent that for your information. I thought there were some interesting takeaways. And well, mostly actually, it'll be really useful for the housing action plan because it has some good data on the housing that is currently available in Woodstock. And I've been saying this for a long time that we have a very old housing stock, and this was really interesting that almost half of it was built before 1960. So, and other good data. The largest the largest emissions are coming from transportation, which I would argue is exacerbated by the fact that people who work in Woodstock can't also live there. So, but the second largest source is housing, residential housing. So it's just something to keep in mind as we try to envision what could be built, I think. Deborah.
So I haven't had a chance to ask Ken Panza this, that he does this amazing analysis and
Yeah.
he did all this work.
A lot of
But
work.
something that's kind of, I don't know, I guess I have a point of view about this, but you know, when you have a smaller house that's well insulated, and John talks about how insulated these panels are, it's much
Yeah.
more energy efficient. I did actually ask him about that and he didn't have any data. But so a more energy efficient house and a smaller house, you know, would ostensibly require less energy,
Mhm.
and lower emissions. We don't have any way of controlling that. You know, someone could build a 5,000, 6,000 square foot house and maybe it's not even well insulated. There's nothing, there's no incentives, right, to do that. So I would hope that anything that we do that's housing related for the community really take into consideration some of those aspects of housing, so that we are we're helping people with a need. They need to have housing, and we're doing it in a responsible way.
Yeah, exactly.
I
And
mean, I feel when I've
Mm-hmm.
looked at this carefully that there's both an economic and an environmental advantage to doing it, because although the upfront costs are a little higher for sure of making it really energy efficient and environmentally sound, it pays for itself, you know, after a number of years, and it's saving in energy costs. So I think it,
Yeah.
you know, this is way beyond our committee, but I think it's a puzzle why communities don't mandate higher standards for newly built homes. It's sort of pretty easy to build them better than we do.
Yeah. Probably because they think it's expensive. That's my guess.
Well, there's a lot of evidence now that, you know, the upfront costs pay for themselves in a hurry. And so my own personal view, again, we're getting way off topic here, is
Yeah.
builders have to figure out how to do it and they'd rather not. So there's a lot of resistance to by the building trades, but that's starting to change too. I think younger builders really are into it. So
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
that's part of the Build Back Better plan. It's tax breaks for that kind of construction. That's
Right.
something that Biden has worked hard on. We'll see if that continues.
Right.
I had a question for, I don't know if this is like a topic for, maybe it's an informational
Uh-huh.
question, or maybe it's related to this report, but given all the housing are old, I wonder if there are any programs in Woodstock to help people stay in their houses. I've read about programs in other towns where there's community groups, either through volunteers or through loan programs or through grants. There's different ways you can do it, where people are, facing a big bill and they can't afford it. And so there's these organizations that develop to try to help people who are in need. And I don't know if anyone's ever heard of this, or if anyone thinks there's a need for this.
Repco does that, John.
Repco does it.
Yeah, they have a lot of programs like that.
Okay.
Yeah. And I actually just signed up for their newsletter last year.
Oh, that's a good idea.
It's a really
Yeah.
great newsletter. And
I'm gonna do that.
yeah, it highlights all the amazing offerings they have that help people.
Do you think that, this might be one role of our communications department? Do you think people know about the options that Repco has that need to know? I don't have any idea.
Mhm.
If I was a homeowner, out off Wittenberg Road somewhere and I was having this kind of trouble, would I know that Repco helps me?
Right.
Hopefully some social service agency or Family of Woodstock or somebody is well informed in all those areas.
Well, I don't
Maybe
know,
we
but I
could just
think
think
the
about it as
average
something.
person doesn't know, honestly. So it actually it's a good idea to maybe add that to our newsletter.
Yeah, to have strategies for getting the
good
word
idea.
out. And
Mhm. Yep. Maybe we should highlight one thing in our next newsletter. So I can add that in.
That's a good idea.
Just a link to their site, honestly.
Mhm.
Mhm.
That is a good
and a
idea.
brief paragraph description about the different kinds of things that they do to help individuals out. I mean,
Mhm.
when I thought of Repco, I think of their projects, right? And not of the
Right.
individuals. And so,
Yeah.
They have a lot of services. It's amazing what they do. Mhm. Yeah, I know people, we think of them as a low income housing developer, but they do a lot more than that. So. Okay, and then the last thing I had on the agenda was, are there other topics we want to be thinking about for future exploration? I had down housing types, so I think we're gonna go ahead with that. The affordability definition, I know we've had some questions about that.
Yeah, it's always such a challenge. It's a good one.
Mhm. Maybe trying to
Yeah,
I
figure,
feel like the agenda you set on these typologies, which actually links to some other issues, is a really good, next thing to
I
buy.
think so too.
Yeah.
So maybe we just start with that and then we see what
Yeah.
comes along as we work on that.
That sounds good.
Mhm. Okay. Does anybody have anything else?
no, I think that county guy whose name I just forgot,
Tyler
name?
Farmer?
Kyler, that he can really help us when we're trying to define the populations in terms of data regarding income, household size, age,
That's all in the
all those
census,
things
actually.
that'll,
The last census has all of
yeah.
that data, so.
Right, but I mean, in terms of how do you, like, there's a lot of people complaining about the STR law right now because it's one rule for everybody. So how do you have different rules for different population groups and embrace that diversity and
Mhm.
try to help people?
It's a
I don't
good
know.
question. Good
Something
question.
that comes to mind.
Right.
One thing that I heard this week talking about to someone about the housing committee was they were reflecting on Woodstock Commons, and their claim was that when it was originally built, a lot of the spots weren't taken by people who needed them, who were from Woodstock, but that people flocked in from outside of town and snatched up a lot of the spots. And I feel like, if this is true, it seems like something to be thinking about. It's really sad if we put a lot of energy into solving Kingston's problems or something like that, if we have unmet needs right here in town. So I don't know if that's true or if it's reasonable to worry about this, but it's just something I'll pass along.
Well, Deborah probably knows better than I, but
Well,
Repco feel strong about having lotteries for the housing. Is that correct, Deborah?
well, yes, but it's also associated with the funding that they have. So, and you can't discriminate. So there are discrimination issues generally, but they mostly went to sort of a 10-mile radius. So it was, and I'm not sure that I think that's somewhat, what do you call it? Anecdotal, that they were all taken up by people from outside. I think there are some people who maybe weren't, Woodstockers. There's lots of people coming into Woodstock that aren't Woodstockers, that are coming in and occupying other housing, and that other people can't afford. But so that's another issue. But I think it's a little apocryphal, maybe is the word, but I think it's a mix, and it'll be interesting. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on her name, the woman who's not here, who lives there.
Tanisha.
Tanisha.
Tanisha, thank you. She was one of the first occupants. And
She was
that's
the
true.
first, you said, the first.
The first. She did not live in Woodstock at the time, but she moved here. She is very much integrated into the community, with her family and everything. And she also might give us some insight into how that worked. So
yeah, I think it's
Just
generally up to the developer to decide who gets to live somewhere, but that's actually another thing we could talk about at some point. How does that work exactly, and who decides? I think a lot of people
maybe the developers, the focus groups. That could be something that could talk about.
And you would also think the town could exercise control if they're providing the property. They could have some say in how it works, for sure. I mean, of course, there's legal constraints, but
Right.
I think you can give a preference. So in other words, I think you can say, if it's town property or something like that, that your preferences or your is to have local, to meet people who either work here or have some, and there's a town that's doing this, and I could be Rhinebeck, that just added this thing into their process, where there's some criteria that gives the town the ability to say, we want to meet the needs of our workforce, or we want to,
that's good.
Something like that, or our seniors. It doesn't mean you rule out others, but you have some ability to have input into that.
Yeah, I think that would be better than a lottery.
As a policy.
Yep. Okay, so I think we're ready to adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
I second.
Great.
It's a good meeting. Thank you.
Yes, thank you,
Thanks.
everyone.
Thank you,
Great.
Catherine.
Thanks, everybody.
Right.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. See you soon. Bye. See you tomorrow, Catherine. Bye.
Bye.